en lo que a mí respecta, agradecerles una vez más que estén todos acá. La verdad es que costó organizar todo esto, cada año cuesta más porque como verán, cada año es más grande. Este año tenemos escenografía, tenemos una sala el doble de grande, tenemos lucecitas, tenemos cositas, va a haber swag, va a haber remeras, hay unas moneditas, hay unos premios, unas sorpresas que ya se van a ir enterando. Mañana hay un live hacking event de la mano de Yes We Hack, ¿sí? No podemos decir todavía el target, no nos dejan, pero mañana hay un live hacking event. El día jueves, mañana a la mañana, en la sala de arriba. Hay un ascensor acá afuera, tienen que tomar el ascensor, creo que es justamente hasta planta baja, creo, o hasta el primer piso. Y mañana arranca, ¿a qué hora arrancará eso? Creo que a las 10. Después confirmamos bien, durante el día lo decimos. Los primeros 70 tienen el swag garantizado, ¿no? 75. No, 65 sería, me parece. Porque después 5 son para nosotros. Así que los primeros 60, digamos, tienen swag garantizado de la gente de Yes We Hack. Y además lo interesante sería que vayan con sus compus y hackeen al target que mañana se van a enterar, porque van a haber bounties ahí, así que interesante lo que podamos hacer ahí, muy, muy interesante. Eso va a durar hasta el día viernes al mediodía, que se va a estar cerrando el live hacking event, y al final, en el cierre de la Eco, en el main stage, se van a estar anunciando los ganadores y entregando los premios.
Bueno, sí, ¿qué tal? Bienvenidos a todos. Un poquito más de detalle de lo que es el Live Hacking Event. Va a haber una tabla mejorada de bounties, así que para todos los que quieran es algo atractivo. Se hace la acreditación en el mismo lugar, así que entran, se acreditan, les dan un acceso al programa privado y ya después pueden, tengo entendido, hackear desde afuera.
¿Todo el mundo sabe lo que es un Live Hacking Event?
Eso, levante la mano quien sabe lo que es un Live Hacking Event. Ok, y para los que no saben, un live hacking event es, como lo dice la palabra, es un evento de hackeo en vivo donde se pone un scope con ciertos objetivos y las personas hackean, básicamente, ¿no? Digamos, en este caso es bastante simple, ¿no? El live hacking event. Pero ¿qué es lo que pasa? Pasa que como este es un scope privado, no se puede acceder hasta que tengan la registración y estén on-site. Luego de estar registrados, pueden trabajar tanto en ese piso del VIP, ¿no? Es el primer piso, como saliendo de ahí y pueden reportar lo que, bueno, hayan encontrado o no. El scope es mejorado, creo que se amplifica un poco más el scope, va a ser un poco más, digamos, laxo. Y va a haber un temita de bounties mejorados también, swag y premios especiales para distintos tipos de...
Cositas ricas para tomar,
es verdad, es cierto, hay bastantes cosas para tomar, así que vayan con hambre. Y bueno, creo que con eso estamos.
Vamos, Javo.
Bueno, otra vez, gracias a todos y a todas por estar acá. Este año vamos además a contar con speakers internacionales, varios más que el año pasado, que estuvo Fred, Stock y demás. Así que en algunos ratos vamos a estar hablando en inglés. Obviamente van a poder preguntar. Si necesitan preguntar y no saben inglés, se acercan a nosotros y les transmitimos las preguntas a los chicos. Así que creo que estamos, ¿no? Algo más, no sé si recuerdo. Un aplauso para arrancar porque así nos ablandamos un poco. Eso, ahí va. Un aplauso. 5 años de la Back Bounty Village, 20 años de Ekoparty, es una locura para los que somos OG, vieja escuela. No podemos creer que haya pasado tanto tiempo de esas primeras juntadas. Obviamente agradecer a nuestros sponsors, que increíble, la verdad que lo que trabajaron este año, principalmente acá los chicos que consiguieron a Meta, Artsec, Mercado Libre, Yes We Hack, Brotec y HackerOne, así que es una background. Por las dudas, tratamos de hacer amigos a todas las plataformas como corresponde. Así que, y bueno, como les decíamos, va a haber mucho swag para repartir, pregunten, métanse. Y ahora, bueno, vamos a estar presentando la primera charla. Sí, a ver, Mago.
Hay un filmmaker que va a estar todo el día dando vuelta por acá, sacando fotos, filmando, algunas entrevistas, así que después les pediremos si quieren también hacer alguna entrevista, alguna foto con el banner de prensa. Todo eso después nos va a dar visibilidad para el año que viene, conseguir más sponsor y que el escenario sea más grande todavía y que haya más remeras y más cosas para regalar. Así que, nada, tenemos que vendernos, también es parte, ¿no? Eso del marketing. Así que, bueno, ¿Lean alguna palabra?
Nada, sobre todo gracias por asistir tan temprano. Sabemos que es bastante temprano, pero bueno, son 20 años, así que nada, gracias a todos, obviamente a los sponsors, como dijeron los chicos. Y arranquemos ya, estamos.
Aplauso de vuelta, bueno. Y un fuerte aplauso. Now switching to English. We are going to be receiving Samuel and Philippe from Meta. Philippe is an outstanding bug bounty hunter and researcher on the Meta bug bounty program. And Samuel Cohen, security engineer, which shows how both sides work together. And well, Instagram app access token leak, so it's going to be huge. Thank you guys for being here on stage. And well, feel free to present.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for the introduction. All right, so sorry in advance for not speaking Spanish good enough to do this talk in Spanish, so we'll do it in English. So yeah, as we said, I'm Samuel Cohen, working as security engineer in the Meta bug bounty team. And here, Philippe Harewood, one of our best researcher and our oldest researcher, is like working on Meta bug bounty programs since more than 10 years now. And today we are going to talk about a vulnerability reported 4 years ago, which shows about an Instagram app access token leak. And we will address in this talk all the steps through the vulnerability from the researcher point of view with Philippe in the beginning, the discovery process, the research process, the triage process. And then I will talk about what do we do when we receive such vulnerability internally at Meta, how do we fix it, how do we mitigate it, how do we pay it out, and so on. So yeah, Philippe is going to start.
Hold on. Okay, so for my, let's go back one. Right. So how I started with researching this was that in the next feature, I was looking for how session tokens were created in WhatsApp, because WhatsApp was using some commerce solutions. In WhatsApp, at the time, they were using catalogs and shops. In Meta, a lot of functionality and features are shared. So between Facebook, Instagram, Oculus, WhatsApp, and it made sense to me to investigate those other aspects of commerce to find more about these features. For Meta, the framework that they use is called blocks. It is used by the engineers to create dynamic user interfaces. The idea being that, as the name implies, it's usable and composable user interface blocks, and it's used for faster rendering, easier code management. For Facebook, they use it for any kind of mobile devices with limited resources. For finding blocks, there are various ways you can use it to find blocks in Facebook and other parts of the products. For myself, at the time, what I did was use Burp Suite to proxy it, as well as MITM proxy. And after a while of tinkering, I realized that you can find the internal menu for blocks. For me to test it and view it properly, what I did was just use Burp Suite's match and replace feature. So anytime I saw an app ID, I would just replace it with the app ID for the internal menu settings. So for example, if I was in the Facebook app and there was a catalog icon that went to the shops blocks, instead of going to shops blocks, it would go to the internal menu settings instead. So this is how the internal menu app ID looks like. And depending on which environment you are in, for rendering blocks, it will show some of the components and it might not show some of the other components. For example, this final third menu here, tooling, is not available because you're not an employee, or if you have a bypass, you can find it, but in general, you're not going to get to this third option. Examples on Playground, depending on which environment you're in, you're going to see different options. For example, if you have a WhatsApp blocks component and you're in Facebook environment, it's probably not going to render the same way, and vice versa. So it was a very slow process of just going through various environments and various block apps to figure out how the observations work and what behavior patterns I could have found. One of the products that I found for Blocks apps was a block app that had features for reviews. These are 3 separate block app requests. The first being a review page for a MetaQuest device. And what you do is you click the review stars. It gives you a breakdown of the product reviews. And the upper right-hand corner of that plus, you get a composer window to attach a photo and write a review. So, as I said earlier, there are different environments that you can work with. Luckily, with this one, you could have used both Facebook and Instagram to render this Blocks app. So instead of using a next endpoint, you could have used GraphQL as long as it consumed a block app ID. This is how the Burp Suite requests look like for the final third flow. And I'm using the Instagram API here with API/v1/blocks/apps/the app ID. And what you do, you'd write your review, you'd attach the photo, and you'd make the request. In the URL encoded body, we have the product ID, which just points to the Quest 2 device. So on submitting this review, you get this large response. And on first glance, it seems unreadable, but it's just the components and the async actions necessary to both attach the photo and create the review. As experienced bug hunters would know, this is just base64 encoded, so all we need to do is just decode it. However, it's not necessarily true that you'll find it more readable, but in this case it was. The important part to note is in bold. It's something that stuck out to me based on experience, and it showed me something that I needed to investigate further. When going through my Burp Suite requests, I realized there was an upload endpoint, and it's used mostly through Facebook, Instagram, and other places, or upload.facebook.com. What I realized when going through it, I almost actually skipped over it, was that the authorization header was an authorization header not for a user access token. This is an application app access token that was here. Normally, you'd see a client token in that place, but in this situation, it just showed an app token, so I knew something was off. For people not familiar with how user tokens work, this is a breakdown of how they're used and consumed. So for a user access token, it normally ends in the string ZDZD, or it starts with EAAAA. These are used in the first party and third party applications, and depending on how they're granted, you can have certain permissions and actions that are used based on behalf of the user. For a client access token, it's more of an application kind of level, but it's not really administrative, so you could use it in analytics. It's composed of an app ID concatenated with an alphanumeric secret, but it's not really a secret. It's not really used. People embed it in their apps, but it's not really a secret token. The third type of token is the application access token, which is similar to the client access token. However, there's some special characters that are added as well. So for myself, through experience, I've realized that the difference between the client access token and the application access token is that the client access token is mainly alphanumeric and it's lowercase, whereas the application access token, you would find uppercase characters and additional special characters as well. So now that I know by observation that I have an app token, I need an endpoint that doesn't get me in trouble from Meta. For me, the one that was non-destructive was a Graph API endpoint that listed the users with roles, with administrative roles on the application. As soon as I did this, I was able to see 25 listed employees, because just by browsing their profiles and looking at the length of their usernames, it just showed me that they were employees. So at this point, I just use my one and only endpoint so that I don't get in trouble with Meta, because if I did anything further, it would have been a violation of the TOS, and more importantly, I would lose my potential bounty. Luckily for me, Meta had a white hat workplace that allowed me to ping a security engineer on call, and I was able to tell him about it, as well as ask pretty please if I can push for impact on this bug. And now I'll hand it over to my friend Samuel, who will show you the second part of this.
Thank you, Philippe. All right. So here it is. This is the report we have received from our point of view, the report that Philippe has sent about this issue. I just redacted that part with the proof of concept that was just basically a curl request and that was returning all the employee that were admin of this app. But yeah, very simple report. And as Philippe said, luckily we have this White Hat Workplace. Workplace is a product, if you don't know it, it's a bit like social media for your company. So it's like as if your company had a private Facebook where you can have private groups post and things like that. And we have one with our researcher and they can ping us there. And we always try to have like someone that is responsible and will reply to messages we receive directly there. So I got this message from Philippe, and in the beginning, I really thought it was a false positive. So I was really thinking it was a false positive because when I looked into it, it looked like a client access token. I didn't knew actually that the special character are the ones that are like specific to app access token. And yeah, so the first thing I did to validate this issue is verify that it's indeed an app access token. And I used Access Token Debugger, which is a public tool that you can use. It's on developer.facebook.com. It's used by third-party developers of Facebook apps. And as you can see, it is an app access token type app. So now I knew it was an app access token, but in my head I was still doubting that this is really a very critical issue, because I was thinking, oh, maybe the developers, they created a specific app just for this upload feature, and this is not really the Instagram app access token. Just call the app Instagram, but it's not really that Instagram app that all the users use. But actually, it was, after verification, the app that is used by billions of users. At this point, I knew this was very, very critical. So this was my response to Philippe. That's the response, the typical response we send when we triage an issue. Basically, from this point, you know that your report is going to be escalated and an incident is going to be open, and we are working on it. So luckily, with all this privileged communication channel, we managed to triage this after only 88 minutes. And then the interesting part starts, looking into the root cause. Here, it was pretty straightforward, the root cause. Basically, developers of this block component just decided to use the app access token as an authentication method to upload their file. In this upload feature, you always need to be authenticated. They could have chosen to use a client access token or some unauthenticated users or some user access token, but they did use the app access token. So the way I would describe this in a metaphorical way is, this is as if you gave your postman the keys of your house instead of giving him just the keys of your mailbox. So you give basically someone that is just supposed to send you something overly big permissions and he can access everything. So from there, I looked also into the code to find similar issues. We very often do that when we triage bug bounty bugs that we receive, because sometimes you find one thing that is vulnerable and there is like the same pattern in many other places. And I found these 3 additional components and endpoints that were doing the same, returning the app access token to the users. My guess is that sometimes one developer does a bad coding pattern, and other developers, they are like working on a upload feature. They would look into the code at other upload feature that exist, and they would just do the same. And so one mistake get copied into another component, and so on and so on. So that was it for all the vulnerable endpoints. Then comes the mitigation part. So in the incident that I opened, the first thing we thought is like how to mitigate this issue as soon as possible. We looked into the products that were affected. We get all the product team looped into the process. We tell them, okay, we are gonna kill these endpoints, so your feature are gonna stop working. But in this case, the criticality of the issue was so big that we didn't hesitate to just take down these endpoints, even though like all these features would be broken. So after approximately 1 hour after triaging this, all the vulnerable endpoints got taken down, so the app access tokens are not returned anymore. Then we rotated the app secret, which is like the secret part of the app access token. We rotated for a new one, and then we had to invalidate all previous one because they have a specific lifespan, and we wanted to make sure that no app access token that has leaked before is still usable for other users. And after that, we can chill a bit because everything is mitigated. There is no risk anymore, but the features still need to be fixed with a more long-term fix, and this was pretty straightforward. They just replaced the authentication that was made in their component with a non-authenticated user cookie authentication, which is like a very safe thing to do. And that was fixed. After this, it was a bit complicated for us to understand what was the full impact of this. And this is very important for Metabug Bounty program because we try to pay based on the impact the issue you reported has. So we will always investigate the issue you reported in order to find the maximum impact and understand the maximum impact. In this case, the maximum impact could have been a lot of things, but we already had mitigation in place that maybe would have prevented to have this maximum impact. So these are the potential maximum impact we have like investigated mainly. Add a malicious app admin, which is something you can do also if you leak a third-party app access token in the wild. And we looked into it, and actually it's not possible because there is a specific permission rule that we created a long time ago that prevents any non-employee to add an app admin to a first-party app like Instagram. So that was not possible. Then this would have probably been the most annoying one, to say the least. Modify OAuth redirect URL causing account takeover vulnerability. So if you know how OAuth work, basically if you can modify the allowed redirect URL in an OAuth system, you can then add, for example, a malicious domain, malicious.com, and you can send a link to any victim with a redirect to malicious.com, and they would log in, and then their access token would be sent to the malicious domain, and then it would be an account takeover. So it's potentially a one-click account takeover because the victim has to click a link. But luckily, this also would not have been possible because of some mitigation we made for another report in the past. We have something we call the sidevar. It's a bit like hard-coded value, and that only employee can modify, and when an employee modifies it, you need it to be reviewed by other employees. So modifying these things are very sensitive, and basically for redirect URLs of first-party app, you have to modify this sidevar and specify exactly what domain you want it to redirect to. And so it would not have been possible to do that. Then disclosing app setting, including sensitive data and sensitive information like app admins and roles. This Philippe demonstrated it in his report. And finally, the potential impact was a denial of service by messing with the app setting. And this is definitely possible. He could have like changed the country restriction on the app and make it unavailable in the world. He could have like tried to change the OAuth redirect URLs and it would have crashed everywhere in the world as well. So potentially all Instagram app could have crashed. And it's actually something I told you when we were chatting on Workplace. I told you like don't do anything, any request with this token, because I was afraid that if we change something by mistake or make some modification to the app by mistake, then we crash all Instagram and this issue would have been worse. So that's it for the investigation. Then what we do usually is we look to what can we do to mitigate further, to do more defense in depth, and to make sure future similar vulnerabilities are less impactful or even mitigate some of the risk with this vulnerability. In this case, one thing that we thought is, why are we allowing first-party app settings to be modified by anyone using Graph API. It makes sense to have this for third-party app, but for first-party app, it doesn't make sense. So we just restricted the ability to edit first-party app settings to make it impossible for any IP that is not coming from internal Facebook network, which is the employee network. You need to be authenticated to be on that network and so on. So now you see, if you try to edit this app setting, it says like the IP address, it's not working and so on. And then another mitigation we have done is we have used Zoncolan. So something about Zoncolan. Zoncolan is a static analysis tool. You can learn more about Zoncolan here at this website, engineering.facebook.com. There is a very good article at Zoncolan. I really advise it. So it's a static analysis tool that Facebook has made to scan our code base and to find vulnerable patterns, vulnerabilities in the code base, even before we ship them into production. So some developer would write a code, and it would be scanned by Zoncolan even before that developer has the chance to ship his code. It's a very powerful tool, especially because in Meta we have a lot of custom Zoncolan rules that are very suited to the Meta frameworks and the Meta technology and the pattern of vulnerabilities we have. So in this case, we made a new rule that would detect if a viewer with privileges, this means like some privilege access is used to get the app access token, and if it is being returned to the user. And we added this rule, and this rule actually triggered 2 years later in 2022, before some vulnerable code would potentially have been pushed to production. So this rule was already useful 2 years ago, so that was nice. So yeah, that's it for the defense in depth that we have done. And then after we know the maximum impact of the issue, and we know like all the mitigation we have put in place, we can actually decide on a payout we are gonna do. In this case, 4 years ago, we decided to do 30K payouts, so $30,000. I think today it would probably be higher, because at the time we did this payout, one-click account takeover was being paid $50,000. Now it is paid $100,000. But basically, the thought process we had here is $20,000 would have been for the issue with just like DOSing Instagram. We would probably pay $20,000 for that. And the $10,000 additional is for all the mitigation we have put in place because of this report. And because, as I said, we pay for all the impact this had on the company, not only what you have in your report, but everything that we do because of this report. So yeah, that's it about this vulnerability. Thank you for listening. I have something else before this. So we have a challenge, a meta challenge linked to the CTF here. You just need to log in with your Facebook account, browse this URL, facebook.com/whitehat Ekoparty CTF 2024. It's a CTF channel with challenge with GenAI, a small GenAI. You give it a word and you do things, and it's quite easy. And if you find the flag, you get automatically added to your Facebook account a bonus for Meta Bug Bounty program. So 15% bonus on all rewards you will have in the next 3 months, up to 2,500. Thank you everyone for listening. Thank you, Philippe. And if you have any questions. Questions maybe?
Thank you guys. Awesome talk. Awesome talk. Congratulations on the bounties. Congratulations on your work doing the bounties. And a alguien con alguna pregunta, yo le puedo auspiciar de traductor si quieren. Sepan que hay swag, hay cosas interesantes que se pueden llevar. Ahí el mago está yendo a escautear. Así que si alguien tiene alguna... ¿No lleva a ver de este lado? Sí, tengo los packs armados acá para ellos, así que tranqui. Me pareció bastante increíble la zona de blogs. La verdad que como se estarán dando cuenta, Meta tiene un programa súper interesante de Bug Bounty y tiene unos payouts increíbles. Y lo más importante de todo, pueden ver acá en donde tenemos un security researcher y un bug bounty hunter trabajando juntos, working together as a team. So for everyone, I think it's a great message, right? Because I know in real life, in person, how Meta handles all the bug bounty program and the recognition for the hackers. So it's an amazing job. And well, vamos con un aplauso entonces, si no hay más preguntas. Muchísimas gracias.